Amazing, beautiful people, how you doing? And welcome back to another solo leveling cut content reaction video. Before I even press play, shout out AniNews. Go subscribe to AniNews. AniNews is amazing. They make these videos, so link to their channels in the description. And they are so close to 700k as well, so go give them a sub. Anyway, my friends, oh man, last night's episode was absolutely insane. I want to say a huge thank you so much to the support my solo leveling reactions have gotten. It's been one of my most successful series. Like, we're not an anime only channel on G.O.T games, so obviously you've never really brought in the views that the other anime only reactors bring in, but the support has been insane. Like in the comments section, the behind the scenes analytics, the subs, even on Twitter. So I really just want to take this moment just to say thank you so much. I can't believe the comment section. Like, I had 1,000 comments in just a few hours of people just saying how much they enjoyed it, and it's been really heartwarming. So I just want to say thank you so much, and I'm glad you guys are enjoying the reactions. It's been a lot of fun. So these videos are also so much fun to check out, and I feel like it's been ages since I checked out a cut content video. So episode 12 has dropped. Let's check out the cut content for episode 11. Don't forget to like and subscribe to support this channel here as well. Maybe one day we'll have a plaque next to that one. Without more talking from me, let's jump into my first time ever reaction to AniNews' Solo Leveling Season 2 Episode 11 Cut Content.
I guess Solo Leveling really knows what the fans want. What could have been an emotional scene highlighting what's at stake and the diminishing faith Korea has in its hunters was instead a Sakuga-filled anime original scene of Cha fighting the Ant Queen.
Wait, that was anime
Both
original?
would have been pretty awesome, but you know as much as I do, one appeals more to the mainstream than the other. That being the case, allow me to build up that tension and set the tone for you, since a lot of the little scenes which do exactly that were left out. We'll also go through how it is the raid really went down, since there's a bit more to be said from both the Korean and Japanese side. So, I will say, I do feel like it built up the tension very well. The thing is, with anything, it can always be done, like, better. There can always be, like, things that can, like, build up tension more, and this can be done, and that can be added. But in terms of, when you think about these episodes that are only 20 minutes long, it did a fucking fantastic job. As we do every week, here's everything that didn't make it into the anime. All the extra details to make your solo leveling experience a more complete one. Episode 23. It's going to get even more intense, covering chapters 96 to 100 from the manhwa and chapters 115 to 118 from the web novel.
It sounds like the Mass Effect soundtrack in the background.
Let's start things off at the beginning of Raid Day, where numerous warships would be deployed all from the coasts of China, Taiwan, Japan, and Korea. Despite half those countries not being involved, it seems others were preparing for the worst. Korea naturally had several contingencies in place too.
I'm guessing it's literally just like a buffer. Like, even though I'm not going to be able to, oh god, look who it is on the left. Even though I'm not going to be able to really do anything, it's just like, I don't know. Now I think about it, are the warships even, is there even any point in them being there?
Which was the large number of hunters stationed to the south. They were ready for any ants that might have fled to the mainland. This is because, even in the case of a successful mission, there was a good chance at least a few ants would find their way there.
True, and you only need one to break through.
With the number of hunters it required to take out just one, sending multiple strike squads south certainly wasn't overly precautious at all.
No, I guess
multiple other strike squads were stationed to defend national territory.
That actually makes a lot more sense, because when you think about all the hunters that were like stationed on the land, I was thinking they're probably there because if everyone fails on the island, the ants are coming for them next, right? So they're there as a last line of defense. But it actually makes a lot more sense that they're there to pick out any that just bleed through. Any that, like, just manage to get past. Because even one can cause so much damage, so you'd need, like, an army to take out, like, 3.
Each consisting of one B rank leader, 3 C ranks, then over 10 D and E ranks. They were groups comprised of both active and retired hunters. There were even those who awakened yet chose not to become hunters. All in all, it was a force totaling 5,000, so out of the 50,000 awakened that currently reside in Korea, that meant 1/10 of them showed up to defend their country.
Oh!
A lot of these volunteers are people like the cameraman, who's a good example of someone
Your country could be destroyed, and you didn't all show up? What the hell?
Who awakened yet chose not to become a hunter. There are people who live a normal life due to raids just not being for them. For the main squad currently flying to Jeju Island, Guildmaster Ma was chosen as their leader. He was incredibly honored to be fighting alongside the people he was, because he knew he'd never be able to raid with such capable hunters again.
He's always got a big old smile on his face. He seems like such a
Cha
sweetheart.
would ask back if he knew why Sung declined, a question to which he obviously said no. When Beck then asked why it was she wanted to know, a rare flustered Cha would answer no reason in particular. Shortly after is when the raid would commence, leading a small number of ants to attack the helicopter. Since not every ant was capable of flight, there
a small number? Hold on, let's rewind for a second.
Ants to attack the
Oh yeah, that's just look at that tiny little amount of ants. Psh, what is that, like 3 there?
helicopter.
Fucking hell, man,
Since
it's like
not every
1,000.
ant was capable of flight, there were only 7 who had come out to meet them.
Oh,
The
okay.
thing
Well,
is, Choi's fire wasn't actually enough to kill them. Yes,
The
it
anime
was capable
definitely
of burning
changed
away
that
their
a
wings, but the
lot
fact it
then.
couldn't one-shot them was a little concerning. It showed him that if he really wanted to incinerate them, then a lot more firepower was necessary. These evolved ants were no longer as easy to kill as they were in the last raid. It's then that Choi would jump into the ant tunnels first, clearing all nearby enemies with a massive AoE burst upon landing. As if skydiving
He's so cool,
hands
man.
in
He is
wasn't
woke.
aura
Yeah,
enough,
yeah.
Choi's one-liner
God
after
damn.
definitely was.
What do you say? What do you say? The last time I played with ants was when I was a little boy. I remember hearing faint snapping noises every time I torched an ant with a lighter. Now I hear fireworks. I'm gonna be honest, it's a little bit messed up there, bro.
So, if you didn't have an appreciation for Choi before, then these two panels together should change that.
He is an awesome
For the
character.
Japan
I don't know
squads
about
who'd
killing
been
ants when
fighting
you're a
for
kid,
about
though.
10 minutes now,
It's a bit weird.
it was about time to initiate the next phase of their plan. The intended retreat, which would send every single ant back into the tunnels. It was right as Goto was about to give the order, though, that Team C's lack of comms would prevent him. There was a chance it was simply due to equipment failure, but considering the number of checks done to them beforehand, it was very unlikely that that was what was happening.
No, it was definitely equipment failure. Yeah, I remember. I watched the episode. It was equipment failure.
So, because the order to retreat needed to be relayed to them too, Goto decided to make his way to them himself. If he didn't, proceeding with the plan would likely cause Team C to meet the same fate as the Korean hunters. It was a price Goto knew he couldn't afford, since when considering the subjugation operations that were to happen after this, Team C was far too important.
I do wonder if the manhwa showcased, or the light novel or the web novel showcased the Goto fight, or that was always how it went down.
Especially since, aside from Goto, they were composed of Japan's strongest. This is because Team C was positioned closest to the ant tunnel, so it made sense to ensure that they were the most stacked. That being the case, to lose them due to a fault of miscommunication, well, that was a cost which would hurt Japan greatly. Luckily, Goto and Team C had landed relatively close, so with his current speed, he figured he could get to them in about 10 minutes.
Love how he's running like that. Looks like he's
Switching
flying
back to
next
the
to her.
Korean team, for the time being, they were relatively safe. With Choi's flame prison acting as a shield preventing the re-entry of ants B rank or lower, that meant they could venture deeper without the worry of being flanked from behind. It was a good application of a move typically used to tie up enemies. Inside, the tunnels were incredibly dark, creating for a dungeon experience that was fundamentally different. You see, where usually the insides of gates were lit up by illumination stones, no light here made it difficult to see anything. All they had was Choi's magic and the cameraman's flashlight. So, in addition to facing enemies who had evolved to see in the dark, they themselves could barely see anything. It was an added layer of difficulty that made things harder. Now, with Choi having no choice but to lead the group, it was—
I would definitely say solo leveling just is victim of every like written story ever. Well, not every single one. To elaborate on that point, it feels like in a book. So you're gonna have every single detail analyzed, and that's on purpose because they want to immerse the reader. You know, they really need to paint a picture, so they have to put more effort into the writing and the story of a book, so they can paint a picture. Whereas in a TV show or movie or whatever, you can just walk into a room and everything's there. You don't need to spend 2 pages detailing what you're seeing, right? So with a scene like this, like the fact that the tunnels were dark and the magic and that sort of thing, it's not something that needs to be highlighted in the anime. It can just be glossed over. And I feel like that's the case with solo leveling in general. There's all these tiny little details that I like, that we'll be like watching this cut content that we get added to the whole story. Tiny little things that obviously would enhance it, but are just not needed, at least in my opinion. Just not needed. Not needed for the whole viewer experience. And I'm only saying that as an anime-only viewer. From what I've consumed with season 2, it's been fucking incredible. Like, these little extras, not needed. I don't know what they would have done if they were all included. But I also feel like having it done this way kind of gives people, it doesn't take away anything from the light novel. So you're watching the anime, and if you want to go read the novels, you still will, because there's extra content that isn't in the anime. So they kind of boost each other up. Anime-only viewers who want more will come over here, because this has a little bit more. And people who want to see these awesome fights and scenes animated will come over here. So in a way, the anime has been done in a way that boosts everything. I don't know if anything I just said made any sense.
Was Moss' job as leader and tank to stand right next to him? His normal outgoing behavior was nowhere to be seen though, as every ounce of focus was spent observing their surroundings. The same could be said for Beck as well, since ever since entering the tunnels he hadn't said a word. He was now using his Eyes of the Beast to detect even the slightest changes of magical energy. The only hunter who remained the same way they always were was Cha with her typical calm, composed attitude. It was once they arrived at the egg chamber that the ants they fought here were simply the nursery guards. They were lesser evolved versions of the ants that were now the Queen's Guards. This brings us back to the Japanese side, where Goto would arrive at Team C's Massacre. The novel didn't describe how said massacre happened, but when compared to the manhwa, the anime was a perfect execution of their executions. Now, you might be wondering how it is Kenzo got injured before this, but it was simply because the ants were more organized than he thought. By attacking with military tactics and flying in a battle formation, the intelligence they exhibited was far beyond what he was expecting.
Didn't they say at the beginning that not many of the ants could fly, only a few had evolved to flying? In the anime, there's fucking thousands, right? So that is a big change, right?
It was another example highlighting the ants' crazy evolution. Now, it was in the novel that Team C actually had 5 S ranks, since the overall strike force was all 20 of Japan's S rank hunters.
Oh.
That being the case, the fact all 5 were killed regardless made their executions all the more worrying. Their bodies didn't indicate any sort of battle either, so where Goto's teammates assumed it was a fight involving multiple ants, Goto immediately knew it was one. The lack of ant corpses made such a conclusion clear. Their eaten heads also indicated the same cause of death, so when combining that with the fact—
I didn't even think about the fact that all of the heads were removed. Makes a lot of sense now.
That this was the work of only one monster, the conclusion Goto came to was that this had to have been done by the raid boss. He would then call headquarters and ask for the location of the Queen, wanting to confirm whether his suspicion was true or not. You see, with Japan being one of 3 countries possessing a satellite equipped with magic energy detection technologies, it was very easy to pinpoint where exactly the Queen was whenever they wanted. It was when headquarters revealed the Queen was still in the tunnels that Goto would panic and order every Japanese hunter off the island immediately. Reason being that the annihilation of 5 of their best hunters from one unknown enemy was far beyond any of their expectations. Yes, they did plan for all sorts of possibilities and variables, but whatever this was far past the scope of any of it. That's when Goto would remember something odd reported to him 4 months ago, involving the Ant Queen and a change in her power levels. Since she was being monitored 24/7, Japan was able to clearly see when its energy levels changed. That being the case, when a massive decline in her emissions was detected almost 4 months ago, Japan's best researchers deemed this the Queen's lifespan coming to its end. With its
okay. I like how this was done as well. I also like how Goto was like chill throughout the entire damn experience, which I wonder if that's going to be different, because the anime definitely showcases him more mellow and more chilled than we've seen him even with Jinwoo and everything. So I wonder how he is in the light novels, because in the anime he's very chilled and collected.
Magical energy less than half of what it usually was. This was the only conclusion they could come to. 1 month was all it took for the Queen's levels to return back to normal though, so with researchers now stumped with regards to what this was, Goto couldn't help but think perhaps that was related to this. So, it was as he wondered more about who this mysterious enemy was that the Korean team would be dealing with the remnants of guards before the boss room. Min had given buffs tailored to each of his party members, so that gave a better idea of what each member's role was. Most did make sense given each member's known abilities, but some of you might be shocked to see Cha with more of a bruiser type buff. Considering how she was the main tank for her own guild, It made sense to give her a boost in both offense and defense. It's a role we'll see come more into play in the boss room. For any ants that did get past the front line right now, Min was more than capable of handling them himself. Yes, being a healer did mean his combat skills weren't the greatest, but when compared to other hunters, they were still at the A rank level.
Yeah, you would imagine so. I mean, I was going to compare him to Jinwoo. I was going to be like, well, look at Jinwoo. Jinwoo's a mage. But I feel like not really a fair or relevant comparison. So now, I don't really know. That's what I was going to, yeah, look at Jinwoo. Jinwoo, it was his mage, but he can kick some ass too. And I was like, wait a second. Shouldn't really be comparing anybody to Jinwoo.
It was more than enough power to handle at least one or two ants. 5 minutes was all it took to handle the second wave of ants before the boss room, mostly because Cha's buff made her way more efficient. Where before she was slaying the same number of ants as everyone else, now she was killing double what Beck was. It gave the squad a lot more time to work with. Since getting here took about 15 minutes from landing, that left about 30 minutes to kill the boss then evacuate. They needed to leave extra time to make it back to the point from which they entered from. It was once the team got close to the boss room that Beck would sense only 8 guards and the queen. There wasn't a whole army like how we saw in the anime, but rather these 9 lone targets making the battle a lot more intimate. Part of the reason this is important to note is because a specific strategy was come up with to deal with them. You see,
you can definitely see the anime likes the Lord of the Rings style epicness, which, by the way, I fucking love too. I'm a big sucker for a big fight, man. A big fight, a big battle, lots of people doing cool battle stuff, you know? I'm a big sucker, which is probably why I love the fights in Solo Leveling so much, because you literally have Jinwoo summoning armies with every fight he does, which is so cool. It's so cool. So this, going into the room, instead of having an intimate fight and a more of like a big fucking battle, I actually like... Oh, the intimate fight would have been very cool as well, though. I imagine all the fights would be tailored and custom made to the S-rank hunters. But I'm a big sucker for a huge battle.
Each guard being as strong as an S-rank, Ma tanking all of them simply wasn't possible. If they were going to take these ants on properly, then a secondary tank was needed to draw aggro from the Queen's guards. So, given that Cha was the main tank for her own guild, it made sense to set her as the secondary tank. She would be the primary guard while Ma preoccupied the Queen. This led her to engage with a skill called Tremor of Provocation, which, as an AoE taunt, drew aggro from all the guards and the Queen. Ma would then use his own Battle Cry of Provocation, which, unlike Cha's skill, was a single target taunt drawing attention from only the Queen. So, with the guards and Queen now split, all Ma had to do was endure. He simply stood tall and prayed his efforts were enough to protect both himself and his colleagues. It was at this point the cameraman would try to step up, but Min's forceful pullback was a lot stronger than he expected. To add to why Min did that, it was essentially because no one was responsible for keeping the cameraman safe other than himself. With the boss fight now well underway, not a single hunter had time to look out for him anymore. So, this was a message to which the cameraman had zero response to, but he was thrown back by just how powerful Min seemed. Though physically he was the weakest S-rank, not only did his aura completely overwhelm his own, but his strength was many levels greater as well. It made clear the difference between an S-rank and an A-rank.
Yeah, especially when you consider the other guy is an A-rank, right? So, and him being a healer, you can imagine he was actually, like there would probably be genuine surprise. Like, I don't know, like, obviously we wouldn't have that surprise, but that's because we're real. But in the world of Solo Leveling, I can imagine there'd be a genuine surprise. If you're like an A-level combat fucking hunter, and then there's an S-rank healer, you probably think like, man, I could probably take him. You might have that for. So in this moment, you're probably like, well, there you go. There's the moment of realization. I definitely couldn't fight this guy.
This brings us to a scene I was pretty surprised they didn't include, since it does well to showcase the far-reaching impact of Jeju Island across the country. Meet Grandma and Grandpa, an old couple where one's interested in the raid and the other not. Grandpa used to be highly interested in all things related to Jeju Island, but lately he found himself apart from it. The reason he was so invested before was because the day the gate first broke there was the day he lost his only son. It was an event that caused him to become a massive supporter of hunters too, since what other way was there to avenge his son than help the people he could? So, for years, Grandpa would donate lots of money to the Hunter Association, filling his heart with anticipation that this raid would be the one to avenge him.
What? This is such a random side story. Is there any like relevances, or is it literally just a random side story about like this guy? And all of this information was included in this little cutaway. I'm gonna be honest, I am not surprised they didn't include this. This would have been very bizarre to include. I imagine, like, again, in the book, things like this are fine. Like, having these random side splits are fine. Can you imagine halfway through the epic fight against the queen and all the soldiers, we just go, and the short word from grandpa and grandma. And they just cut away for like 5 minutes just to tell this backstory of a random character who hasn't been relevant to the story at all. Unless he's like the parent of someone, in which case, if they are the grandparents or related to someone who's actually on the island, then that's a death flag. So including that would be bizarre as well.
He was so caught up in seeing it happen that in the days before the raid, he couldn't even sleep. This, of course, filled him with high expectations too, but the more eager he was, the bigger the disappointment when those raids ultimately ended in failure. So it was during the third raid that the news would say all the things that they were saying now, leading Grandpa to feel like he was betrayed since it all turned out to be a lie. The reporters always said how the raid was going to work this time, but with each attempt, the outcome was always the same. Eventually, Grandpa would stop talking about hunters altogether, as he had stopped expecting the one thing he wanted most from them. To him, the subjugation of the ants was a dream long gone now. It's the reason why he's so grumpy here, and it's also why he's so emotionally invested shortly after. It was before he would have this change of heart, though, that Grandma would show her faith all the way through. She never gave up hope that these hunters could avenge their son. She did feel bad that such young people were seen getting injured, but she also cheered whenever they made progress. Like, with each Queensguard the team took out, both her and the neighbors around her could all be heard yelling. It was a sentiment of hope shared across the entire country. It was when only 2 guards were left that's when Grandpa would join her, showing nothing but anticipation for the success of the hunters currently fighting. Both were overcome with emotion as they reminisced of the last memory they had with their son.
You know what? I may be Uno reversing myself here a little bit. This actually could have worked quite nicely. You know, and I don't know. I'm kind of fucking with Grandpa and Grandma here a little bit, you know? I'm kind of liking them. And it was one shot that maybe changed my mind. It is the fact that the TV is in the background. Meaning that if you were going to cut away from this fight, this moment of epicness, and just go to this the whole damn backstory on a random character, it would ruin the momentum of the fight. It would just destroy it. But if you did it quickly enough to show the whole world watching, and you show in the background the entire fight the whole time, so it never loses that momentum, it would work. And it looks like that's actually what they did in the book. So you know what? Maybe I take back what I said.
It was a celebration for the job he'd just secured over at Jeju
Shout out Grandpa and Grandma.
So, this scene may not seem like much, but what it does give is an inside view into the perspective of the everyday person. Last episode, Chairman Go was worried about the diminishing faith in the Hunter Association, and this right here was the scene to prove it.
Yeah,
that
true.
notion that an entire nation was depending on them was really made clear.
How many people must be invested in this?
For the sole TV station that was reporting the raid, its audience rating had reached a new viewership record of 85%. For context on how much that was, even if South Korea was to reach the finals of the World Cup tomorrow, no studio would even come close to that. Everyone was way more interested in the country about to become one of the few who've successfully cleared an S-rank gate. With only America, China, Russia, and France completing one before, this Korea-Japan team was about to become the 7th to ever do so. So, given how...
That statement raises another question for me. Are there any more dungeon broken S ranks? That was the wrong way to say it. S rank dungeons that have been broken? Feels better. You know what I mean? Are there any more Jeju Islands out there in like other locations in the world that people just haven't cleared yet? Because the fact that there's only those countries are the ones who have cleared them means 2 things in my mind. Either those countries have cleared multiple. So like, let's say those 4 countries alone have cleared like 20 S-rank dungeons, which could be the case. Or there's more that haven't been cleared for the same reason that Korea didn't clear Jeju Island. Or there just isn't that many. It's unbelievably rare. So it's one of those 3. I never even thought about the fact that they could clear this. What happens if they clear it? Like, how do you become a national level hunter? You have to clear an S rank, but what, on your own? It's clear an S rank dungeon on your own?
This Korea-Japan team was about to become the 7th to ever do so. So, given how rare of an occurrence this was, the director couldn't help but think about all the money he was about to make. That's when the howling screech could be heard from his feed, along with an update regarding the alarming news that the Japan teams were withdrawing. This brings us to the fight with the queen herself, which honestly the anime did better than both. They added quite a lot to Cha's scenes, and the panels which the manhwa depicted beautifully were brought to life as best they probably could. I do still like to appreciate how amazing the manhwa looks though. It was after getting healed from the acid attack that Ma would activate the defense skill Advanced Fortification, enabling him to endure the queen's attacks easily now. The rest would jump in and force the queen into a corner, leading Beck to see that this was it for her.
Man.
His instincts revealed exactly how she felt up until the screech happened. It was once the fight was over that the novel and anime would show this brief moment of celebration, but in the manhwa there was no such time for that. As soon as the queen was dead, the Ant King would be there shortly after. It was right before it showed up though that Hunter Ma would get the call confirming the Japan team's withdrawal. Immediately, everyone began to assume this situation was futile, since if 20 S-rank hunters couldn't even hold off the ants for 30 minutes, then how could the 6 of them fend off an entire army indefinitely?
The thing is, at this point, it's more like their lives are like the forfeit, right? Because the ants will die out in a year. Killing the queen was always the goal. So in this point, they've killed the queen, mission accomplished. Now you got to get out. But if you can't get out, you still accomplish your mission. So this is just a genuine fear for their own safety, right? That at this point.
For 30 minutes, then how could the 6 of them fend off an entire army indefinitely? It was a bad situation turned worse when he showed up. With the Ant King's footsteps sending shivers down their spine, the hunters present could only stare in awe at it. Cha would be the first to recognize something was incredibly wrong, since for a monster so ominous, she couldn't sense its presence at all. The Ant King was a being she could only sense with her eyes. This was a discrete level of power she'd only ever felt once before, and that was from Sung himself. So, as she stared listlessly at the oppressive aura this Ant King emanated, she could only imagine fighting it was akin to facing off against Sung. It was a fearsome thought that caused her to shudder and restricted her breathing. Ma, as the leader, needed...
I love that. I love that so much. I fucking love that. That is such a cool statement. She looked at his ant and she thought, fighting this would be like fighting Sung Jinwoo. And then she was like, oh, I wouldn't want to fight that guy. Love that.
To make a quick decision here, but as logical as it was to just fight the monster, a strong sense of unease prevented him from giving the order. It was when he finally overcame every basic instinct telling him to run that the Ant King had already gotten behind him. In a flash, it moved to the queen without a single hunter noticing. It was speed that confirmed this was in fact a threat unlike any they'd ever faced before. So, it didn't simply walk like how we saw in the anime, and it didn't eat the Ant Queen either. It instead roared.
It was very cool how it just walked past though. Let's be honest, that was cool. Bro literally was just like, yep, whatever, I ain't got time for you guys, just fucking off I go over here. Just walked right past them. It was very, very cool scene.
Like how we saw in the anime, and it didn't eat the Ant Queen either. It instead roared so menacingly it brought everyone to their knees.
Oh, damn.
It's not clear whether this was an attack or not, but the sheer intensity of it was enough to paralyze everyone. Only Cha remained standing, albeit just barely. That's when the Ant King would choose to focus her, striking her on the side of the head and rendering her unconscious. The rest of the fight is depicted very faithfully to the manhwa, but does differ slightly when it comes to the novel. So, as shocking as it was to see Cha removed from the fight instantly, every hunter present knew the longer they hesitated, the less likely it was for them to survive.
Oh, it was so good.
It was a mindset that led Ma to grab the Ant King with a bear hug, restricting its movements until his opponent would sever his arms from the inside. It was then Beck knew he had to intervene, because to not do so now meant Ma would have been killed right there. This forced the Ant King to switch his targets, defeating everyone until Ma would enter again. Turns out the others had been healed too, so every hunter minus Cha got to get a beatdown a second time.
Oh,
it was once Ma had returned for the third that finally the Ant King would clue into the existence of a healer. You see, Min's camouflage was working perfectly. The Ant King truly had no idea where he was, but now that he knew...
He honestly is an incredible healer, isn't he? He was an incredible healer.
Min was around, there were several ideas it had to work around it. one of which was to use Ma as bait. So, the Ant King decided to constantly damage him by giving him the Loki treatment, but held back just enough in order to keep him alive. That way, it would look as if he was about to kill him, forcing Min to have to heal Ma over and over again. This created for a constant output of healing magic, from which the Ant King could then pinpoint Min's location. You see, small bursts made it impossible to hone in on where it was coming from, but a steady stream of magic would eventually become perceptible to anyone. This would be how the Ant King found Min, ultimately leading to his death. Eating his head then allowed it to gain Min's strength and knowledge, which is a topic I'll actually cover in an extra cut content video. The way this monster became the Ant King is actually a small side topic of its own.
Oh.
Now, it was when the Ant King asked Beck where the Human King was that in the novel Beck would straight up out G.O.T and say he was outside. As cowardly as it was, Beck had no choice but to use G.O.T as a means to buy time for him and his teammates.
I'm glad they didn't include that. Beck, up until this point, has been incredibly honorable, an absolute warrior, and a badass. I'm so glad they didn't include that. I think that not good. I don't like that. I know people are going to disagree, especially Manwu readers and stuff. You're all going to be like, nah, man, it should have 100%. I personally don't think they should have included that. I feel like that goes against everything Beck is, and you could argue that in that moment, it's because of how scared he was. He had no choice. You could argue that, but I'm glad they didn't. I feel like it was better. Imagine Beck just being like, he's outside, bro. He's out there. Go kill him, please. That motherfucker. Out that way. Leave us alone. Like, that would, come on.
Beck had no choice but to use G.O.T as a means to buy time for him and his teammates. Now, considering how the outcome of G.O.T's fight is still inconclusive, I'll wait till next week to talk about how that went. If you're wondering why G.O.T decided to call himself the king though, you'd be surprised to know it wasn't entirely out of hubris.
He's just an incredible fan of Ghostbusters.
It was actually a firm belief that stemmed out of a position he planned to hold in the future. Since Japan's true plans were to subjugate Korea and create an empire, G.O.T knew the only viable person to assume that throne was him.
Oh, he actually wanted to be king.
About what it was the Ant King was asking, G.O.T had no problem confirming he was the king. To him, he had every right to say he was. It was only a matter of time before such a position was solidified as truth. At least that's what he thought anyway.
Yeah, it's only a matter of time.
That's pretty much it.
Only
for this
a matter
episode.
of time before G.O.T becomes king.
Don't forget to check out the solo leveling merch and be sure to subscribe if you want to see more.
Subscribe if you want to see more.
Until next time, though. Ciao.
Shout out my boy AniNews! My boy AniNews with his incredible freaking videos, man. Really love this dude. I do. I really love this dude. He puts together some absolutely fucking incredible videos. Ah, it's so good. It's so peak. It's so good, man. This anime series, I keep thinking like ReZero ends on Wednesday, just a few days. Then Solo Leveling ends on Saturday, and then what? And then what? We go from eating good weekly to eating fuck all. Like, what now? Isn't Dr. Stone ending too soon? Isn't Apothecary Diaries new season? Like, everything's ending. What we got? Apparently there is a couple of new Lazarus, people saying, and stuff. I think a couple of new animes coming out in April. We got Dandadan coming back in the summer. Isn't the Overlord movie coming to Crunchyroll at some point? Demon Slayer's movie? That's coming out this year, right? Oh, man. But movies are one day, one moment things. It's done. You watch it, it's over. That's it. It's fucking, here's the movie. I watched it. It's done. There you go. That's it. So fuck the movies. Even though I cannot wait to see the Demon Slayer movie. So excited for that. The Overlord movie I'm less excited for, mainly because it is a side story between episodes, so its placement is bizarre, and you can also kind of see what's going to happen. It'd be like me saying, there's an anime movie for Solo Leveling coming out that takes place about the king, the Ant King. You know, it's like, it's going to be cool, but you already know the outcome because of where the anime is. So that's how I feel with Overlord. I'm very excited to watch it, but not on the same level as Demon Slayer. Yeah. Oh, God, this anime is peak as hell, man. But yeah, Lazarus. Should I watch that? It's so good. And I love these extra cut content videos. I do. It makes me like, like I said, just love the anime even more. Because I really appreciate the extra information. And I feel like when you're like watching the anime and you have this extra information, the best thing, it's like, for example, when I read the Game of Thrones book, I read the book before I watched season 1. I literally read the Game of Thrones book, and on the back of the book it said, as seen on HBO, and then I And then I went and watched the TV show, and I started like midway through season 1. And I remember like reading the Game of Thrones book, and there's certain scenes like that mainly were around characters' emotions. And it was the same with like Harry Potter when I read the Harry Potter books. It was around the like emotions of people. So I'd be able to watch the show or the movie, and in my back of my mind, I'd be thinking, oh, I know this character is thinking this. I know this character is feeling this. For example, in Game of Thrones, in the books, this isn't really a spoiler at all, actually. Daenerys and her brother in the first episode or second episode, whatever it is, that scene, Daenerys is thinking about how she was going to marry her brother in the future. In her mind, she was always going to be with her brother. She imagined she would marry her brother, be with her brother. And in the show, they just don't talk about that, don't acknowledge that at all. So there's like you have no idea that that's what she's feeling. So I remember when I watched the series, I was thinking that. Like when she's like looking at her brother, in the back of my head, I'd be thinking, oh, you know, she's thinking about the fact that she thinks she's going to marry him, which I thought was it's like a nice touch for when you like read these things. And I feel like that's the same feelings I get when I watch Solo Leveling, and I have these extra cut content. In the back of my mind, it's like the characters' emotions, what the characters are feelings, and it just like adds a bit of extra to the emotions of a scene, but not the scenes themselves. That's not what I find myself like thinking is missing from Solo Leveling, and I don't think anything is missing from Solo Leveling. I really feel like season 2 is fucking incredible. I think they nailed it. I really do. And the extra cut content, it's like, oh cool, we get this extra information, but when I watch the episode, there's nothing that I feel like is needed. There's no scenes I feel like is needed. There's nothing they missed out. And when you consider how much time they have, I mean, episodes being 20, 25 minutes per episode, they nail it. They are able to utilize that time fucking incredibly every single time. They do a really, really good job on it. Oh, man. This was really cool. I'm actually very, 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 very excited to see episode 12. I'm also surprised... Wait, didn't episode 11 end with exchange? I'm surprised that wasn't mentioned at all here. Not even a little bit. That's gonna be curious. And what about the shadows coming out of the ground? Like, that whole ending. That was this episode, right? AniNews said they were going to another one, but that's around the Ant King. Huh. I just realized, yeah, the whole ending was excluded from this video. I guess that's on purpose to hype up next week. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed my reaction. Thank you so much for watching. Again, shout out AniNews. And yeah, if you're not watching my Solo Leveling reactions on YouTube, on G.O.T Games, go subscribe to my main channel. You find a link to that in the description too. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, you absolute legends. Have an amazing day. And as always, my friends, you will see me in the next video.